Oh, what's up, people? Okay, so apparently my snippet isn't updated anymore. So I have to fix that. Just to be title. There we go. Alright, so today we're going to be working on the save system. Alright, so yesterday we stopped at line 17 and things to do. So let's go over there. Set the timer. To 68. Okay. So we finished, let's see. We were working on player name and we need to test that code. See the notes in client up high, line 335, 336. Alright, so let's look at that. So yeah, this is what needs to be tested. But we can't actually test it because the client, the file isn't in a working state. So like what we're gonna have to do is we're just gonna put this here and say that needs to be tested. Same thing for that. And I mean, a better way to do this would be to just put below section like this. Yeah, so we need to test that. But let's just review it. So in the dir check, whenever the player name gets changed, it gets sent from server side to client side. This function is going to handle the reception of that data. So whenever the data gets received, it's gonna set this attribute, the name attribute, to the received data, and then we're gonna check to see if that attr name string was equal to name. If so, we check client ID and run the associated visual data save function, passing in the P1 name for client ID 1 as the object name arg, and then receive data as the data arg, and that is should be the proper code, because receive data is the actual value associated with the namespace. So we have the namespace and then the associated data, which is the actual name. Then we have else here, which is for handling if client ID is equal to 2. We do the same thing, but instead of P1 name, we do P2 name. Yeah, and that should be correct. So it looks good, but we're not going to be able to test it because the file isn't in a working state. I suppose I could test it. I mean, I could like fix it rather so that we could test it, but I think it's, I could just I could honestly just do all of them first, all the adders, and then we could just test the whole system at once, you know what I mean, instead of testing each one individually, and that would kind of make it more streamlined, and it would basically have the same effect. So yeah, we're probably just gonna do it that way. So player name is actually done now. Let's just say done, and then we have object name. Why is this right here? This should be at the top right there. Okay, so player adders, player name is done. So next is going to be play score. So let's go ahead and do that one. We'll say current, and so let's just go ahead and find that one, and this is going to be set. So how are we going to do this? When does this need to be saved? Well, it needs to be saved every time that it gets changed on the client side. So let's go ahead and do Control-Shift-F on this to find it. And actually, I can get rid of this bookmark, I think. Apparently that was our only bookmark. I thought we had more, but I know that the git merge that we did, or git stash rather, messed everything up with that. Okay, so we have the property. This is going to be the getter, and what happens is we calculate the play score, and then we end up returning it. So I would say basically every time, well, I could say every time this is calculated, we would save it. But that's not really accurate because it's not being altered. If that makes sense. It makes more sense to change it, to save it only if it's changed. And the way that we know that it's changed, well, we could have a parallel attribute that we would create called like previous play score. So we'd basically add in, we'll say save system. And let's do add in code to save play score if it has been changed, which would be therefore add code, add previous play score total adder to be compared against play score at this location. So let's go ahead and create a bookmark here with Control-Alt-Z. Now we're going to go all the way to the top, and let me just verify that this is the way that it should be done. So we do need to record the play score every time that it changes because so play score consists of your play cards and your melds only, aka your canastas, your melds, and the cards that you're attempting to play. And yeah, it gets calculated in the context of a play being finalized. So it's like, if it meets the requirements of the rule set of the game, it would already have gotten to this point. So we don't have to worry about any issues with like this play score being different, like not actually changed permanently, but like changed temporarily, and then we would errantly save it thinking that it was different, and then like the play ends up being a failed play. Therefore, it doesn't work. Like we would save it, and then it would immediately like change again because it was a failed play attempt. I'm like 99% certain that's never the case, and yeah, pretty certain we'll be safe using this system. I think so. Let me look up and just see through progression. Let's look and just verify. So this is in draw discard pile, attempt to check hand match. So yeah, this would be like a finalized score. This would be, if it passes this requirement, it would be like a permanently added to your melds and stuff. So this is not something that could be taken back. And then same thing for here. If current player play score is less than the meld requirement. So technically here we would well, you know what? The reason that I'm concerned about this is really just because of the fact that we want to display your score. And what I can do to solve that is we're just going to have a separate, we'll have a separate score called meld score. And I think I actually already, let's see if I can find this. Draw domain, update visuals, change name, draw, no. Add visual meld score. Here we go. Add visual meld score. Creating a meld score to be displayed for each player. It consists of melds, Canasta, and lippers to compare against meld requirement. Yeah, so this is this is actually what we're going to use. We're not going to use play score, because play score is different. Play score is really for, it includes attempted play cards, but we want to have a basically a score, you know, your total score that just tells you how much your melds are worth that you have played. It doesn't take into account, you know, anything else like red threes and black threes. It just shows your actual score, your meld score. So let's go ahead and first of all create that, because that's going to change what we're doing here. We're not going to save play score in this case, because we're not going to display play score. That's not something that's going to be saved. That's something that's calculated every time it is referenced at the time of reference. Well, I suppose you would say the same thing about if we made meld score. If we have meld score, it wouldn't need to be saved, would it? Because meld score would be it'd basically be derivative, to where as long as we had the cards in the meld, we would just reference that property, and it would run the getter and get that calculation for us. So yeah, I think what we'll do is we're not even going to worry about saving this one. Yeah, so we can just remove that from the list altogether. So let's go over to things to do. Matter of fact, first off, let's get rid of this, because we don't need this anymore. Alright, so we have save logic, other file. Let's open that back up. And so play score is out of here. We don't actually need to save that. That's a derivative. So the next one would be round score. And let's see if we even need to save this one, or if this is another one that is derivative. So we have round score. This is a calculated property. And it will run this calculation for us. And since So what we could do here is have a secondary attribute just like we were going to do with the last one with play score, which would be, well, that's basically finished round scores. But, well, yeah, because it's only run at the end of a round. Appends to the list to keep track of the final round score at the end of each played round. Should work properly since round score is only checked one time for each player at the end of each round. So the round score is not going to be visually displayed actually until the end of the round. So we don't have to worry about that one. So that doesn't actually need to be saved. So there's another one off of our list. Now player hand. That we definitely do need to save. That's for sure going to need to be saved. So if we, let's give this a color. So the player hand is going to consist of cards, which are basically just integers. Basically, it's going to be a list of integers, the card group IDs. So each card has an ID, and that ID is the same one that is used for the card group dictionary. Let's see if I can find this. It's create double deck. Unless, where is it? Okay, create double deck, and then we create card, and the ID is equal to the card ID. The card ID let's see, where is it? For current card in master deck, game card sprite group add. So we're adding the, and then we, okay, this is what I was looking for. We register each card to the card group dictionary at the current card's ID. So that is what's used to register each card in that dictionary. I feel like this should be inside of create card, but we'll worry about that another time. Okay, so now we got that. Let's go ahead and go back over here. So how are we going to save this? I think what we'll do is we need to go to custom append list, and anytime a card is popped or appended to the hand, then we would update it. We would save that new data. So if we go to custom append list, and then or should we do this in dir check? It's sort of either or because they're both relatively the same. Like for instance, in dir check handles receiving the card once it's been transferred, and then that's what calls the append method. So you can see right here, if opstring is equal to a for append, we append to the card group, and we even identify the cards through the card group dict at the ID. So like it would sort of streamline the process. I mean, or we could do it internally. It's if we did it inside of the append, that would mean like we might have to put it in less places, because append is always going to be called, you know, like inside append is going to be called anytime. So if we put it inside of append, then we would basically guarantee that every time, like that one location would handle everything. So I think what we'll do, otherwise if we did it here in dir check, we would be putting it like, we would be placing it everywhere where we called append. Granted, append is very crowded and stuff. But it would be smarter overall, I think, to put it in custom append list. So if we go over here and we find append, now I do have to be careful because there are instances wherein like we will call append let's see, initial deck append, change from dir check equals false. Like whenever we do what is it called, resituation requires us popping all the cards and then re-appending them to the card group, which is technically like sort of ghetto. You could say that it's ghetto, the way that it happens. Honestly, I'm not sure where I would want to have it. because if I put it in append, well, append just gets messy, right? Because I'm trying to remember these specific instances that I'm talking about. There's all kind of weird shit that goes on in these methods here. So changed from dir check equal to false. That's going to be a contributing factor into whether or not we're going to want to save the data, because well, that's not actually true. Is it? I don't think it's actually true, because anytime that we append to the hand, we want to reflect that change, unless the change is superficial and it's just for the purpose of resituation. So that's what I would be looking for. I would be looking for the resituation section. Let's see if I can find this. Resituate. Okay. Resituate section. Whenever a card meld is popped from another custom append list, calls the locate card group update function to visually resituate the prior card group via the prior card group name. Okay. And like, how does this happen? Don't we use append? We say meld num equals item prior meld num for meld in blah blah blah. Locate func dictionary. So we call the proper function the locate function. And what does that do exactly? The func dictionary, let's see, locate visual deck discard hand pre-sort update. So this would handle resituation. Resituate section, whatever is being resituated. So it clears the card group and then it appends back to the card group. See what I'm talking about? So we do call the append method. For X card implication, X card prior card name card group append. Okay. So we append to X card. We append X card. And we do a changed from dir check equal true. And the reason we do that is because we don't want to we don't want to resend the data. That's why we do change from dir check. All this becomes very complicated. This is a nightmare. Long story short, though, we'd have to either designate every time, like we would have to pinpoint the logic used inside of append that dictates whether or not we're actually appending to the card group or whether we are resituating it. I guess really the question would be, would we want to save the data even if we're only resituating it? Well, I suppose that we would, because that correlates to the visuals. Yeah, so I would say actually it doesn't even matter if it's a resituate or not. Whether or not we're resituating the card group, it doesn't matter. We still want to save the data associated with where each card is located in the hand or whatever. So that means we would basically universally save it whenever we appended to it. So we don't really need to worry about whether or not it's a resituate. That's not really important. What is important though is finding the logic within here that dictates when we're appending to the hand and all that. Like there's a lot in here, and you have to be careful because, for instance, when we do initial dec append equal to true, in this case this is like run from setup, I think. So it's when we create the dec. It's the initial dec append, and like we don't want anything extra to happen during that time, so we just immediately return out of it in that case. So in that instance, I don't think we would want to save the data since we're going to be rerunning setup upon a reconnect, and we already like deemed that we would be rerunning setup. That's already been established. Yeah, so with that in mind, we could just add in a new clause here, a new little section in this append function, which says let's see, it would say if the card group name is any one of these card groups that we're going to be keeping track of, which cards are in it, etc., etc., we would save that data, save the cards that are in that card group to the database. It'd basically just be a couple lines. We just want to make sure that it's in the right spot, and like we said, this does get called for resituate. So this function, it does recursively get called sometimes well, not necessarily recursively, but it gets called in an odd way whenever we're doing resituates, but technically a resituate is still a visual data change, so we would want to record that anytime it's altered. So I think a good spot to put it would be right here, and we would just add, let's see, 32025 save system below section. Well, that needs to come first actually. Below section 32025 save system, and this is going to be handles saving. What would they call them? Card group dict IDs, or just card IDs. It's just a card ID. It's handle saving card dot IDs of each visually represented card group to database for data restoration upon DC. Yep, there we go. And then we'll just have, we'll say 32025 save system above section needs to be tested. And then we're going to do cursor, well not cursor, we're going to do visual, but we have to call, what's it, visual data save function for each visually represented card group. So that means we're going to need to import this function from save logic, and then we're also going to need to create a list of visually represented card group names, and that list is going to be, so well, let's go in order here. So first let's import visual data save function. So let's go up here and say from save logic import visual data save function. I can go right back to where I was, line 122, and then that's done. Now we're going to create a list of visually represented card group names, and that would be, we would basically just say if self.cardGroup name, and does card group name include the, okay, card group name does include the prefix. So this would be all of them, I think. The P1 hand, P2 hand, pre-sort, play cards, melds, red 3 meld. So all these. Well, also for the deck and the discard pile. So all of these. So we would just copy this entire list. Well, then we could just reference it. We could say if it's in the card. Well, we don't need to do that. We can just create the list of the names. Skeleton list tubes. Yeah, we don't want that. We just want, we'll copy this. And I can create a new little, I'll create a new list right here at the top. And we'll say, this will be called the visual, we'll say visually represented card group names. So let's say visually, or we'll just call it visual card group name list. And it's going to be a list, or a tuple rather. It doesn't need to be a list. It can be a tuple. Tuples are a bit more performant. So it's going to be a tup, and then we're going to say not transferred. And then we can that right there. And then we'll list all these. There we go. Get all these evened out and then fix them. There we go. So now we have the visual card group name tube consisting of the deck, the discard pile, P1 hand, P2 hand, P1 pre-sort play cards, P1 play cards, P2 play cards, P1 melds, P2 melds, P1 red 3 meld, and P2 red 3 meld. And we'll just put a note here. Created 3/2025, save system. A list of all card group names that are visually represented. The list used, this list, or this tuple, is used to refer to all group. This tuple is used to save visually represented card group. Every time they are modified. To save card groups to the database every time they are modified. Yeah, there we go. Create 3/2025 save system a list of all card group names that are visually represented. This tuple is used to save visually represented card groups to the database every time they are modified. and that would be appended to or popped from. So that means we would want to put it inside of we need to put this code inside of append and pop. So let's go over here and make sure we do that. Ensure save logic is added to append and pop. Now if we go back over here, let's see where we at here. Custom append list. Why do we have this open in 2 places? Not sure. Alright, so now we can go ahead and go back. Do we have a bookmark? I don't think we forgot. It's line 122. Nope, that's not it either. It's a little lower. Here it is. Okay, so if self card group name is in visual, we call it visual card group name tube. How do we refer to these class lists or tubes? We just refer to them, okay, so through self. So I need to refer to it in terms of self. So we would say in self dot. Alright, create list of visually represented card group names, we did that. And then if self card group name is in a visual card group name tube, then we want to call the visual data save function for each visually represented card group. So then we'll call that function, and we have to pass in the object name and the data. So the object name in this case would be the self card group name, right? Which is already a string. So we'll say self dot card group name, and then the actual data would be so we'll call this card ID list, which is well, we'd have to make it a list because we have to append to it, and then we'll say for card in self, right? Wouldn't it be the self because it's the actual card group? Yeah, so for card in self, card ID list dot append card dot ID, and this will just basically create a list of card IDs that are a mirror version of the, it's basically just a skeleton version of the card group itself. So yeah, if self card group name is in self visual card group name tube, call visual data save function. So this creates the card ID list. Then we iterate through the self and appends each card ID to the card ID list. And then we're gonna save the data using visual data save function with the self card group name as the object name, and the associated data would be the card ID list, right? Because we have a list of IDs. Yeah, and that's the list. That's the cards that are in the list, the card group. Simple, right? So we'll just say card ID list. Now, I was thinking here, instead of like, so in this case, if it was the deck and if we're appending to the deck, if we just appended one card to the deck, like whenever we discard, that will cause us to recalculate the entire deck. We would iterate through the entire deck again just to create this card ID list, and then to save it. But it seems smarter if we were to just address only the card itself instead of the entire list, because I mean, every time a pen gets called, that's per one card. So we don't need to iterate through the entire list every time we add one card. We just need to save the data. Well, we would need to like technically there's two options. Option one would be this, where we would recreate the list of IDs that exist in any given card group. Or the second option, which I think would be more proper, would be we would load in the last save version of the data of that card group that we had saved, and then we would once we loaded that data in, we would then modify the list. So instead of, like, let's say we have 103 cards in the deck, or 100 cards in the deck, and we make a discard from P1 hand into the deck. Whenever that happens, the deck is only going to have one more card. Now, since we call this save function every time we append to this deck, that means the save data is already going to be there concerning the last state of it before we appended this card. So instead of recreating that entire list of 100 IDs, we would just load it in from the database because it already exists there. And then we would save it. So we would load it in, and then we would modify. So basically we would load it, convert it back to a Python object, modify it by appending this ID to that list, and then we would just dump it back to the database again. I think that would actually be a better option. It would probably be more performant. Although I don't know, maybe I could be wrong. It might be faster to just create that list. I just don't see it being faster though. I'm pretty sure the operation for loading in a list like that is pretty fast. So I think we'll do it that way instead. So we're not going to do it like this. We're going to say so we need to structure this though in a certain way. Like we need to say if this card group has not been saved yet, well, that means there wouldn't be a record of it, right? So if this was the first time we were saving to the saving this data associated, let's just say the deck. If this was the first entry, then we could just run visual data save function. But that wouldn't actually check to see if it's been saved already. So we would need to first run some code that checks to see if it's already been saved. If it's already been saved, if it already exists in the database, then we'll have to load it in and then modify it. So we'll say first check if exists, check if card group has already been saved to database. If it has, so there's a few things to consider here because we have to worry about whenever we're doing reconnects. Whenever we do reconnects, we have data that would be saved but I don't think that would like have any bearing necessarily on this. Would there be any like influence of that? I don't think so. It wouldn't matter. So yeah, we would just check to see if the card group has already been saved to the database. If it has, load in previously saved data. And then 3, then we would say 2A modify list of saved IDs by appending, well, yeah, modify list of saved IDs by appending new item.id. But this would actually be 2B because we would have to do another thing before it, which would be 2A, where we would first convert DB object to Python list and modify list of saved IDs by appending new item ID. and then we would save. 3 would be save modified list to database. List of card IDs. Well, this would actually be 4. So we have 2. If it has, well, this would actually be 2A, and then this would be just 1, and then 2. This would be 2B because it's the second option. So if it has not, go to step 4. Because in that case we would just, it hasn't ever been saved yet, so it doesn't exist, so then we would just save the list of card IDs to the database. Which we can say that would be 3. There we go. Yeah, there we go. So we're getting there, and this should handle just this little set of code right here. Will handle every single card group. So like, it'll all be in this one place. We'll have everything get handled here. The player hand, player pre-sort play cards, melds, and red 3 melds. And that's pretty much it. But we do have to add that to pop as well. So let me go ahead and put that we're going to stop right here. So we stopped at line 138 in custom append list. Alright, so we're gonna quit there. We're gonna do git branch. Now we're in our new feature branch, so we can do git add dot git commit dash m. Paste in this message, the title being visual data save function part 3 save system. Then we have our date, then our times, and then the other things that we did specifically. Alright, so that should be good. We committed that. 6 files changed, 47 insertions, 12 deletions. Now we'll do git push to push the remote repo. Alright, there we go. And